I feel like my head looks really big on the podcast.
It's fine. Your head is a perfectly normal size. These are the affirmations that I can offer you, Shawn. Your head is a perfectly normal size.
It's all I ever wanted from someone is for them to tell me that my head's normal size. All right. Welcome back to the Lost Ledgers, everyone. It's once again been a couple weeks. Say hi, everyone.
Hi, everyone.
Okay, well, we all watch Dimension 20 here. I don't want to become...
I've been listening to too much Dimension 20. So.
Last time you saw us was 2 weeks ago when we did Spooky Spells. We finished our Spooky Spells compilation, which was a compilation in which we brought almost nothing new. Zach made one additional spell, but we were just catching up on stuff we didn't finish before. But this week, it's all new. Do you guys know what the theme is this week? It was Adam's idea.
It's weapons.
It's weapons.
That's
it's
right,
weapons.
everyone. It's weapons.
Do the children's show thing where you ask an open-ended question, wait 5 seconds, and then answer it yourself.
Yeah. So this week we were talking about bringing in some weapon stuff. The most obvious idea is to make feats based on weapons, but we did a little bit more variation than that. It's mostly feats, but...
I was going to say, it's mostly feats, but...
Some of these ideas obviously aren't complete because we can't make a feat for every single weapon and have it be done in one podcast. So some of these are just kind of proof of concepts of things that could be expanded, which I think is cool. I think it gets some juices flowing for some people.
Yeah.
Was there anything you guys wanted to say before we started to jump into things, or?
No.
No.
All right. Well, I'm going to go ahead and jump into things then. Like I said, this week is doing some weapon stuff, and I'm going to introduce the idea with my own set of things, because mine are a little bit simpler than everybody else's, because it's part of, like I said, a bigger incomplete system. So I'll kind of explain the system I was kind of going for here. So the idea that I had was that I wanted there to be a bigger distinguishing factor between simple and martial weapons that isn't just damage, essentially, and some properties. And I thought the best way to do that is I haven't been playing it recently, but when it first started going to early access, playing Baldur's Gate 3, which has a cool little thing where they have some bonus actions or actions you can take based on your weapon that do specific stuff. And I was like, that's a cool idea. I think it could probably be expanded on a little bit more to be a little bit more specific to each weapon. And a thing that I think a lot of martial classes don't have a lot of is bonus actions. If you're not a rogue, you don't really use your bonus action very much. Like, not even the monk uses their bonus action as much. They use it for bows, obviously. But that's about it. There's not a lot of variety in what to do with your bonus action. And I thought it makes sense if there was something extra you can do with a weapon with your bonus action if you're, trained in it. Like, there's actually a purpose to being trained in these more complex weapons. Because they're, as far as the rules are concerned, they're only more complex by name and not really anything else. They're just called martial weapons versus simple weapons. So, going into it, I've made 4 here. There was a couple more that I've done, but these are the ones I was maybe the most satisfied with, though I'm not fully satisfied with them. We got the flail, the rapier, the scimitar, and the short sword. And part of my goal here was to try and bring to light kind of what these weapons are sort of known for, at least a little bit in the real world, or at least how they're represented in fantasy. So, starting with the flail is the best example of that. We have, as a bonus action your turn, you can choose one creature and prepare yourself to extend your flail to sweep over your target's defenses. Until the end of this turn, your attack rolls with the weapon gains a +2 bonus against that creature. So the idea of this, one of the biggest values that you get from a flail in combat is being able to go over someone's shield. Which is where the +2 comes from. And this is kind of what they're supposed to emulate. Now, obviously, I didn't want to say you ignore their shield bonus because that's a little too finicky. and it's not applicable to most combats because not everyone has a shield. I wanted something that was more applicable, so I just made it a flat +2 so that it always affects regular shields, but it still has some benefit to other creatures as well. And a good way of getting high AC as an enemy or anybody is to just have a shield, and this circumvents that. So it essentially ignores that bonus that you get from a shield, which is the whole point. Then we have the Rapier. As a bonus action on your turn, you can choose one creature and pinpoint their most vulnerable point. Until the end of this turn, the next time you hit the creature with this weapon, it deals an extra 1d8 piercing damage. So it essentially doubles the amount of damage they do on the first hit if you use your bonus action for that extra damage. So this isn't really any stronger than like dual wielding a rapier and another rapier. It's just you wouldn't have to get another rapier to do the same amount of damage. And if you did dual wield, you'd have to choose between hitting with your second rapier or using this rapier. So it's essentially like having an offhand rapier with one rapier. So mechanically, it's not that far off from like a regular build. It is a little bit stronger because you don't need to get a feat to carry 2 rapiers. But it's supposed to
bring that up. But...
Yeah, it's supposed to emulate, how rapiers are kind of, you're supposed to be, finding that wavering in their defenses and, make your mark at the opportune time.
Yeah.
The Scimitar. When you hit a creature with this weapon on your turn, you can immediately take a bonus action to impose disadvantage on the next attack the creature makes against you until the start of your next turn. The next time the creature attacks you before the start of your next turn, you can immediately make one weapon attack against them. So this is kind of like marking them. This is sort of playing into the fantasy of being able to go like quickly swipe your opponent with your scimitar, right? Like the idea of using scimitars like whoosh, like going super fast and like really cutting them up. And this is meant to kind of emulate that, and also imposing that disadvantage on an attack against you. So this whirl of blades essentially is both defense and offense. This one is a little bit finicky because it both gives the disadvantage and it gives you the extra attack if they attack you. So that one's a little up in the air. And then the short sword, when you hit a creature with this weapon on your turn, you can immediately take a bonus action to move up to half your movement speed. This movement does not provoke an attack or opportunity from the creature. This one, I think I would actually rather it be... I was thinking about this before I put this all together. I think I'd rather it be you can move up to half your movement speed, but you have to end your movement next to the creature still. Because what it's emulating is gladiators use short swords. They use gladiuses. So it's kind of emulating that like maneuverability, like, that being able to try and get a drop in your enemy while in the middle of combat, like being really mobile, moving around. And I think this allowing you to just move without provoking kind of steps on the toes of the rogue a little bit. The rogue would obviously be using the short sword more often because it is a weapon that they can use as their sneak attack. But like I said, this kind of steps on that, so kind of double dips in that same realm. So this wouldn't be as useful for rogues. So Ryan kind of a little unhappy with it.
It's sort of the same complaint you have about the Goblin Rogue build, where it's like, like you look at the Goblin's traits and you're like, oh, I really want to build a rogue with this, and then you realize, wait, but I can already do some of this as a rogue. So.
Exactly. It doesn't really give you too much, though. It does give you extra movement, which is also helpful because it doesn't take away from your movement. You just get to move up to half your speed.
Yeah. So for the scimitar one. Is the extra attack that you get supposed to consume a reaction, or is it supposed to be no action economy? Okay.
No, it's supposed to be the benefit of using your bonus action.
Okay, excellent.
I gotta say, in general, I like the idea of this. Did you have a full system for like what you would do? Like, is this just something you would get if you have proficiency in the weapon, or
yes? So this is just you. This is something that you get simply if you're proficient with the martial weapon. And you're using it. So you can't just pick up a sword and not be proficient and then be able to do this. You have to be proficient, which gives value to the Weapon Master feat, which allows you to choose 4 weapons, because it doesn't... choosing specifically 4 weapons is like, well, I'll just choose the ones that have the biggest numbers.
Yeah.
And it's like, what if you want to be able to choose things because you want a specific role in combat?
Yeah.
And this is what this system's supposed to kind of let you do. And like I said, it allows weapons to stand out from one another beyond just damage, and that's about it. Is it range and melee, and how much damage does it do? Is basically all you care about.
Yeah, and for some builds, whether or not it's a heavy weapon.
Or finesse, yeah. So those properties sometimes get into play, but they're largely useless to the grand majority of characters.
I think that this is exactly what I was going for when I suggested like make weapon choices matter. Like this is exactly what I wanted to see. Like, oh yeah, just something extra that you can do with a weapon to differentiate it from other weapons that might otherwise be mechanically very similar. The So for the short sword, you were talking about like maybe making it so that you have to sort of stay within range of the creature. Um would would the wording work to say you can immediately take a bonus action to move to an unoccupied space within 5 feet of the creature?
Oh yeah, because that would
That wording is taken, not exactly, but it's very similar to the wording that Colville used on the Illrigger.
Yeah, that's an interesting idea. I might want to change the word move just so it's a little bit less confusing. But I actually like the idea of being able to use the short sword and being able to move through your opponent's space if they're like blocking a hallway or something. That kind of maneuverability.
Yeah. Well, or honestly, maybe something like that. Maybe like when you hit a creature with this weapon on your turn, you can move through that creature's space as though it were not difficult terrain.
Yeah, well, you can't move. You can't move through your space at all in 5e. Like, so you could if you hit a creature with a short sword,
you can move through their space until the end of the turn.
Yeah, that honestly might be good enough, honestly, because it's supposed to kind of emulate your ability to like weave in and out of your opponent with this small weapon and like take their opening and maneuver around it. So that would actually be perfect, I think.
And then my other thing was about the wording on the rapier feature. So you say until the end of this turn, the next time you hit the creature, why wouldn't you just say the next time you hit that creature this turn?
Because I didn't think of it.
Okay, cool.
That's a much better. I was reading that and I was like, I feel like there's a more concise way of saying this.
Just extra piercing damage. No, I like all of these. I think that the flail one feels a little. The flail one feels the most boring of the 4 of them.
It is.
But like +2 to hit is
it's not
pretty
bad.
big.
Yeah.
Like that's
+2 hits good.
Yeah. The only one that I'm worried about is the scimitars being a little bit strong.
Yeah, the scimitar, because it both imposes disadvantage on the next attack, but also if they attack you, you get it's giving you 2 benefits if they attack you.
What if instead of putting both benefits on them attacking you, what if it's a benefit on them attacking you or on them doing something else? So what if it's a disadvantage on the next attack that creature makes against you until the start of your next turn, and advantage on opportunity attacks you make against that creature? So like you get a benefit if they attack you, disadvantage, or you get a benefit if they try to go and do something else, advantage on the opportunity attack.
I like that because then it's adding a niche one kind of in there to hold it, because like they're not always going to get an opportunity attack on somebody.
And it does mean that there is a route for the creature to take where there's still no penalty, which is stay next to you but attack someone else.
Yeah.
But
yeah, I think that could work. I was thinking mostly trying to make it being able to turn your defense into offense. So that wouldn't quite fulfill that fantasy, but I'm also not I'm not a stickler to stay to that specific fantasy.
If you wanted to stay that, I would just get rid of the disadvantage and maybe add something else, because it just seems too heavy-handed to me.
I do like how swashbuckly it feels, though. Like it definitely evokes that sense of like the like whirling blades of scimitars. Like I think it succeeds at evoking the right idea, but I think we're all on the same page here that it's a little clunky.
Just a little.
The way that I was thinking about it when I made it, I think, is that I'm thinking of someone who's dual wielding scimitars specifically. They can already use their bonus action to.
Sorry. What if you just gave yourself AC to any attacks made from that creature instead of giving them disadvantage?
That was my original thought. It just felt a little boring.
Yeah. Disadvantage just feels really strong.
It does, though. I was thinking, like I said, of dual wielding scimitars. And if you're dual wielding scimitars, you can use a bonus action to just make an attack. Whereas this would be you use a bonus action to wait for them to attack you, and then you can attack. So it's delaying the attack, which may not happen at that point. So I still wanted to give it a benefit. A bonus to the AC with the the retaliation attack might be better than the disadvantage though, because like you said, disadvantage is a little strong.
Yeah,
I didn't think its disadvantage is being that strong because I'm thinking of things like True Strike, which is just a cantrip that automatically, or like Steady Aim that the rogue gets, which gives you advantage on an attack. But I think
like
maybe
your self advantage is a little bit different. I don't know. Just I know they're like the same thing, but just on a different spectrum.
yeah, they are the inverse of each other. It would only be one attack, and you would retaliate in that case.
And you have a chance of missing it.
Yeah. Though this would also be a little bit because True Strike is a Wisdom save too. This is if you hit, it just happens. If you want to use your bonus action for it. So I could see it being like a flat bonus to your AC. I just don't want to do too much of stacking bonuses, but there's also a thing to be said about stacking disadvantages and advantages as well. Because they can't be stacked, and it's like, well, do I even do this if they already have disadvantage?
Yeah,
it's something worth tweaking though.
Yeah,
I definitely like keeping the idea of being able to get an attack on them.
I do like the action-free attack. I mean, I guess it's not really action-free since you're using your bonus action to trigger it, but
I'd be fine with this, like just because I don't know how strong it actually would be. It just feels like it might be a little too strong.
Well, and most enemies past very low levels have multi-attack.
That's what I was
the fact that it's
thinking.
only disadvantage on one attack.
Yeah.
I mean, it's good. It's definitely good, but I don't think it's that strong once monsters are making 2, 3, 4 attacks a turn.
That's fair.
Yeah.
That's actually what I was thinking of when I was kind of changing my mind that it would be okay enough to keep.
Honestly, I think that the way that the scimitar is set up right now, I would just need to play with it a little bit to get a feel for how good it is. Because that's the thing, since this is a framework that you're planning on adding a bonus action to every martial weapon, I think this is the sort of thing that is like, yeah, we are just adding power into the system. So like, it's not really useful to say, how is this balanced against the system as it exists? It needs to be balanced against the other options here, and you're just willing to add some power into the system.
Yeah. No, I agree. I think there could be something there to tweak with the scimitar. My biggest thing with the scimitar is that it just feels clunky to read. Mostly.
Yeah, it is a little clunky to read, but the picture in my head I like. So I think it's on the right track. It's just a matter of finding the right combination of detriment to your opponent and benefit for you that evokes that in a clean way.
What if you just add additionally the next time the creature attacks you?
Yeah, that might help it a little bit. Yeah, instead of making it feel like it's one breath, give it a little bit of time to get to the next sentence. Yeah, this is plucked straight on my rough draft. So I didn't even go through this is on the draft where I'm just like, I want to just get the ideas down. So I wasn't focusing too much on like wording it better. But now that I see it and like we're talking about it, I'm like, oh, I really want to adjust this.
Yeah.
I've submitted stuff like that.
Yeah, for sure.
I think we all have.
No, I like this idea a lot though.
Yeah, I really want to finish this. It's just it's a lot of things to make. There's a lot of martial weapons in the game.
There's a lot of martial weapons, and most of them don't have a defining feature yet.
Yeah.
That's definitely what I started to think of when I was working on mine. I was like, man, there's a lot actually.
Yeah, there is.
If I wanted to do this whole thing.
There's kind of a lot. I mean, hell, even if you were like, we could have done as many feats as we did, literally just doing pole arms. There's so many martial weapons.
There is. Speaking of doing feats for pole arms, we can move on here to Zach's next thing because at least one of his is a pole
Oh,
arm, so that segue still works.
I thought you were gonna go into mine because I also did a feat for a pole arm.
You guys both started with a pole arm. So yeah, we got Zach's here, which is both 1 feet but also 4.
Yeah, so my idea for this was that it was 1 feat where you picked something and you could pick from this feat again and again and
Yeah,
pick like a different weapon each time. I'm thinking now this might be something entirely different from feats because I wouldn't want to make that many feats for that many weapons even because it would be a lot. So I'm
Right.
thinking this could be some sort of system in different in general. I'm just not sure what. But what I have is weapon savant. You pick from one of these. I've got spear, hand axe, flail, and sickle right now. Uh, all of them gain a +2 to hit with whatever weapon it is. The spear gains while wielding a spear. It has the light and finesse properties. And if dual wielding a weapon or shield in your other hand, gain +1 AC. The hand axe gains you can throw 2 hand axes in one action, both using the same roll to hit. Must have a free second hand to throw both axes. Hand axes you use have a new range of 60 to 90. Flail has any flail that you use does an additional 1d4 piercing damage. And once per short or long rest, when you hit a creature with an attack, you can have the target make a Constitution saving throw, DC 8 plus proficiency plus strength. On a failed save, the target is stunned until the end of its next turn. Nothing happens on a successful save. Sickle, you while wielding a sickle, it has the thrown property of 20 to 60. And when you hit with a sickle, the target makes a Constitution saving throw, DC 8 plus proficiency plus strength. On a failed save, the target is bleeding until the start of your next turn. A bleeding target takes 1d4 damage at the start of their turn. Nothing happens on a successful save. And I know this wording's not good.
Yeah, I'm honestly not going to harp on the wording. It's been a
yeah.
couple of weeks, and I'm just past it now.
I'm just
So
past it now.
I'm just past it. I'm done with
Was
it.
there anything else you wanted to add before we started going into it, Zach? Like your thoughts or anything like that?
I don't I was kind of trying to play off of the same reasonings as you were. I'm like a big fan of spears, and I love the idea of being able to dual wield a spear, but I also wanted the idea of like if you had a shield, you could have a spear. I think spears should be more useful than they feel in D&D. And same
That's
for the rest of these, really.
Yeah, I totally get it. Well, and it feels like a shame that the spear, as the only simple pole arm, doesn't really have a use case, or at least not a
Yeah.
good use case in D&D. So my big question is about the hand axe. So
Okay.
you say you can throw 2 hand axes in one action. Is your
Mhm.
intention there that I can throw 2 hand axes with one attack? And so if I have
Yeah.
extra attack, I'm throwing them like 2 at a time?
Yeah.
Okay. Okay. Sick.
Interesting.
Um,
Hmm.
so
I like the picture of that.
that's the thing. That's a really cool visual. I'm trying to think of what you're actually giving the hand axes then, because essentially you're saying that your hand axe is auto crit because you're rolling better than auto crit because you're getting the weapon mod
Well,
on the
would you
second
be
one.
rolling 2 attacks or one with both?
He says the same
Oh,
roll to
same
hit.
roll to hit. I see.
Yeah.
So basically your hand axe is auto crit,
Ah, fuck.
but you can
Oh.
only draw another one hand axe as a free action. So you wouldn't be able to do this infinitely, even if you do have a bag of
Yeah.
hand axes. So that's the thing. This is like, even though there's no limitation on it in the ability, this isn't
Mhm.
actually something you can do that many times. Like you can maybe pull this off like every other turn or something. So
Yeah,
I
yeah.
think that
And
that's
you have to have enough hand axes. And I mean, I know there's ways to have things, but
right. Yeah, no, I think that the logistics of this outweigh my initial thought was that's way too strong. But now that I'm
double hand
talking it,
axes
yeah, that's
six
the thing. Now that I'm
times.
talking it out, I'm not really sure that it is. Because like let's say that you're a fighter 4. You can or fighter 4, fuck no, I mean a fighter with 4 attacks. You
Mhm.
can't throw 8 hand axes unless you have the thrown weapon fighting style, in which case fuck yeah, throw 8 hand axes a turn. Also, you're level 20. Who gives a fuck? But that's the thing. Unless you have the thrown weapon fighting style, you can only pull this off once every other turn, I think.
Well, if you have dual wielder, you can do it. You can do it twice per turn. Well, actually, no, because you'd have to have 2 already out, throw, draw 2, throw 2, but the next turn you can only do it 1 more time. So yeah, you're right.
Dual wielder can do it 3 times every 2 turns.
Well, no, 3 times the first 2 turns, and then once every turn after that.
Oh right, yeah. Dual wielder only gets Dual wielder only gets the advantage if they either like start of combat or if they spend a turn doing melee attacks.
Yeah, I don't think this is that bad. I mean, the other way of looking at it, instead of looking at it as you auto critting with the axe, you could also look at it as throwing a great sword.
Which is that's also a great visual. Remind me to add the throne property to great swords.
Oh, dude, I love the idea of adding the properties that I added to some of these.
Yeah, I like all these. Bleeding feels a little weak compared to starting next turn. Yeah, because essentially it's just adding a D4 sometimes to the damage. Versus like the flail getting it all the time.
Well, and I also am not a huge fan of the fact that it adds a saving throw to every hit that you make.
Oh, yeah, that is true.
That was the last one that I made, so that one's a little bit finicky.
I guess that's true. Well, you wouldn't be able to be affected by this twice in a row, right? Because it's the same effect twice.
Right. But also most monsters have good con saves, so like they're going to be succeeding on this a lot. And so if you're making 2 or 3 attacks a turn, it's probably they made the first one. Well, did they make the second one? Yes. Well, did they make the third one?
Yeah.
Also yes. So I like the idea of the bleeding thing here. I just like the idea of like overbleed damage. Like, oh, you take a little bit on your next turn. But I think that the implementation here is a little finicky just because it's not much damage, but you're also adding a ton of die rolls.
Yeah, I had the idea of like the inflict wounds in my head, but I didn't want to make it as strong as that, or not because the weapon of inflict wounds or whatever it is, where you hit them and it can stack basically.
Yeah, the wounding one.
Right. Yeah, sword or whatever.
That was my idea with it, but I didn't want it to be bleeding stacking. I wanted it to be 1 and then done.
That's fair.
But yeah, I see what you mean by making the save.
I do like the idea of the sickle being thrown, though.
Yeah.
So I kind of want to go
idea
was your original idea was what?
I was maybe gonna make the second part of this something with the sickle coming back to you like a boomerang style,
turning the sickle into a
but I couldn't.
Boomerang.
Or like that one guy from Inuyasha is the sickle on the chain.
Oh yes,
that would be cool.
I don't remember his name, but yeah,
and it's like Kimiko's little brother or something.
Isn't it Sango's brother?
Oh, sorry. Yeah, I got my characters mixed up.
I don't blame you. It's been like 15 years since I watched Inuyasha.
So, honestly the biggest boon to all these feats, I think, is the +2 to hit.
Yeah, that's a big game.
And I was thinking about
too weak because I added that last. I had all of the other stuff, and I was like, this feels like not quite complete.
I mean, honestly, the UA Weapon Master feats, all of them gave a +1.
Yeah, that's what I was gonna say.
Okay.
And some of those have pretty good features baked into them, and they still gave a +1 to hit. So, like, I think that the +2 is not totally unreasonable here, because I think that the weapon feats from the UA kind of erred on the side of being a little weak. I
just feel like +2. I know it's hard to say because the fighting styles can kind of get in that realm too, where it's like +2.
Right. I think that 2 is absolutely the biggest number that you should add into anything without referencing it as a proficiency modifier or a con mod or whatever. Like, I think that you should not be adding numbers bigger than 2 in 5th edition. And I think
Yeah.
that 2 is kind of pushing it. Like they explicitly call out in the
Well,
weapon feat UA that +1 is it's an obvious boost, but it's not really math.
and because you're getting this feat and you're just getting all you're getting is just the weapon, like stuff for
Yeah.
just this weapon. I
Yeah.
felt like +2 was
Yeah,
like appropriate.
I think that's probably appropriate. Well, and in the weapon feat UA, a lot of those were just like classes of weapons. It was like, oh, this is for all swords. Oh,
Yeah.
this one is for axes and hammers and whatever. Like, since those were for
Yeah.
weapon classes, I think they were less niche. So I think that it's fine that you've got the +2 to hit here. I don't begrudge that.
Yeah, I'm still, I don't know, because the thing is that I'm thinking about in a lot of modules. I think that might be fine because if the DM is following the module, they have less control of like what items you get. But even in those cases, because I'm thinking of, I have a player, they're investing all of this into one weapon. I have two options. I can either give them more of that weapon or not, and if I don't, it's gonna make them feel bad.
Yeah.
And if I do, it gives them a huge bonus. And because I'm thinking about this, like, yes, it's only for the one weapon, but if that's the weapon that this player is investing in, that's going to be the weapon they're going to have. So it's
Yeah,
effectively
right.
all of their attacks anyway. Very rare cases do you have characters who are swapping between multiple kinds of weapons. Like I know Alexandria does, but she's the
even
only
then,
one in the party really, besides Penance,
Yeah.
and Penance sucks with weapons.
And for the most part, that's when she's switching from ranged to melee.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
that's when she's switching modes that she switches weapons.
Yeah, and unless you're playing like a character meant to be specifically that, it's extremely rare. So I still feel like it might be too high.
Thinking about that, that's fair. Well, so thinking about that like that also, I'm hesitant to even make these feats still. Like I think this might need to be a different something. I'm just not sure
And
what. Like just
if
an
you're
additional ruling you would add or something.
if you're talking about having this as like a separate advancement system that martial
Yeah.
characters have access to outside of feats, I would remove the +2 to hit,
Fair.
or bring it down to a +1 maybe. But like, I
As a
that
feat, you think the +2 is fine?
honestly, as a feat, I think +2 is maybe pushing it. Like Shawn raises a good point that like characters aren't really switching out weapons. So like, even though these look niche, they aren't really. For the most part,
Yeah.
you have a weapon or like a pair of weapons that's what you're doing almost all of your combat with. So like maybe it should go down to +1 or that's the thing. Like I'm thinking about balancing them as if they were feats, but you're talking about these being part of a different system than feats, and so I don't really know exactly where the numbers need to be. But like,
Well, what's your guys' idea on that?
I
Like,
think that's a cool idea, but that is
there
that
would
is a
be,
lot more work
yeah,
that needs to be done on this system. Like, well, I mean, I think that's cool. Like, you guys both came up with entirely new systems to make your weapon choice matter, and you went about it in different ways. And I really like it. I like both of these. You probably couldn't add both of them at once
Yeah.
because
No.
that would switch the
No.
martial versus caster discrepancy in the other direction. But I think that these are really cool, and I think it would kind of make sense to have a system of progression that marshals have access to, but spellcasters don't, or
That would
that
be cool.
half casters have partial access to. Like, I think that'd be a neat thing to add. Like, maybe when you
Yeah.
get an ASI or a feat, you get to grab one of these, or something like that. I don't know. I think that there's a ton of ways that you could work that system up. Honestly, maybe just when your proficiency bonus increases, you get to grab one of these. And then as your
Yeah.
proficiency bonus increases, it's like, oh, well, now I've got 2 weapons that I'm specialized in. And that actually gives you more incentive to switch between weapons because you've got a wider range of different things that they can do. And it's like,
I like
oh, well,
that.
my proficiency bonus just went up to 4, so I get access to a second weapon specialty. Like, oh, maybe now I'll, have a different weapon on hand. Like, I think
Actually,
that's kind of cool.
That's
I
a
like
cool
that
idea,
quite a
actually.
bit.
I like it a lot.
Yeah.
Um,
I I think thinking about them as not feats, I would probably go down to +1. I'm not like in love with the plus anything there. It was just because it felt like I didn't have enough with only the 2 things that I had on them.
Sure,
yeah,
yeah, no. I totally get that. I have been known to look at a feat and say, this is kind of weak. Maybe I should just make it a half feat instead.
Yeah,
yeah. I think Adam's on the right track with that idea.
I like that.
I think like yeah, making a system where it's like every time you gain a proficiency bonus increase, you can choose weapon with which you are proficient to get one of these like features.
Right. And that
Yeah.
way, even if you're playing a class that doesn't get full access to all martial weapons, you can still become specialized with one of them. Like, even if you're
Yeah.
playing a monk, you can grab the short sword one of these. Or, like, if you're playing a rogue, you can get one for a dagger. Like,
I like that in general. Just thinking of it as creating something that's almost equivalent to the a spell list for marshals with weapons, kind of.
That's
Um,
that's kind of
yeah.
what I did with maneuvers for the
I was
fighter.
just gonna say
on the
that.
monks.
Like, weird. I wonder if there's some list of, for example, maneuvers that marshals can have access to.
What I would say is that if you did a system like that, I would get rid of the pluses altogether.
Yeah, I might come up with like just more
Honestly,
specific things for the weapons, and maybe make the abilities a little bit stronger.
Yeah, I think that if it's going to be like sort of a spell list thing where it's like, oh, marshals just get to pick and choose a few of these, you could do without the pluses because they're getting their pluses from their additional ASIs and the fact that they don't need to worry about their mental stats for the most part. Like,
Yeah, I'd be pretty cool with that. I like that idea.
yeah, no, I think that this is totally sick. And also I think it's an absolute crime that the spear is not finesse PHB. So like good on you for making the spear a dex weapon here.
I
It is pretty wild.
while making this, it made me really realize why they did group weapons into a lot of feats and didn't make them like all specifically have their own feats, because like that was my original goal. And then like I looked at the weapon list and I started to try to think of ideas for each one, and I was like, oh my god, this is gonna take forever.
One quick note, and this is just for talking about like how 5e formats their shit. And this is a little known fact. That is only has one exception, but when it comes to the ranges for weapons, if it's a thrown weapon, it's usually the long distance is 3 times that of the regular distance. And for ranged weapons, not thrown ranged, the long distance is 4 times that of the regular distance. That's almost always the case. The only exception is the javelin, which for some reason they chose to make it that way. Probably because javelins are meant to be thrown, versus all these other ones being like they can be thrown as opposed to being made to be thrown. So the only thing I might change is the range and the handex.
What would you make that range? Because I
honestly
was just trying to extend the range.
Honestly, I might just make it like it doesn't have like sharpshooter it basically. Just make it so it doesn't have disadvantage up to its 60 foot. But if you wanted to go longer, I'd probably make it like 40, 120.
I was just gonna say 40, 120. My original thought was 45, 135, but 135 is an ugly number.
It is an ugly number, yeah. And that would double its regular range. It would double its range generally, which I think is a pretty good boon.
Yeah,
so
I'm amenable to either of those.
So yeah,
I
did in my homebrew fighter make a superior throwing weapon style, which advances the throwing weapon style, which makes all melee weapons thrown and increases the thrown distance for all existing thrown weapons. So look into that, even though it's nowhere on the internet for you to find it. Zach.
Easy.
Oh goodness.
But
Wild. No,
yeah, I
this
think
is great.
I like anything that's going to expand the weapons. So I'm digging these. I especially
I like this idea a lot.
yeah, I like the spear having light finesse. I like the flail having the stun ability because that's one of the things you use a flail for, or like a morning star even, just like
Yeah.
really bludgeon someone. I like the idea of adding the piercing damage too. I might finagle that to be like maybe a D6 of
made
both,
sense.
but
You know,
whatever.
On a list of things that just make sense, that just made sense.
That just makes sense. Yeah, we've all seen the Witch King in Lord of the Rings. All right,
I mean, it's been a few years, but I've been meaning to rewatch Lord of the Rings lately.
Marathon.
Yeah, we gotta do a marathon. We gotta do a marathon with Sid and Sarah. I don't know if Sarah could do a whole marathon, but we need to do one with Sid at least. Maybe just do like 3 days in a row where we get together and watch at least one of them.
Yeah, I was gonna say I'm not sure I could handle a marathon, but like I could go for like we watch one of them like 3 times in a row that we hang out.
Oh yeah. All right. Well, let's go ahead and move on from here to Adam's feats. And these are unambiguously feats. They're not part of like a bigger system or anything like that.
Right. No. Yeah. These are unambiguously feats.
So, Adam, why don't you go ahead and hop us into your little weapon feats here,
All
or
right,
so called.
So the first one is called superior net throwing. You're superior at throwing a net. You've
Nice.
trained long and hard with nets, and you are well acquainted with their uses. Not to mention, you can throw them really well. You gain the following benefits. The range of nets you wield is increased to 10-20. When you take the attack action on your turn, you can make one of the attacks with a net and still use any additional attacks you would take as part of the attack action as normal, provided the additional attacks are not made with a net. So all this is doing is just removing some of the baked-in disadvantages of using a net. Like, for example, the fact that you can never attack with a net without disadvantage, because its range normally is 5, 10. So you're either attacking at long range, or you're attacking with a ranged weapon, a target that is within 5 feet of you. So I doubled its range so that it's possible, still difficult, but possible, to make a straight roll with a net. And then the other big disadvantage of the net is that even if you have extra attack, you have to use your whole attack action to throw it. And this feat means that you don't. You can't throw another net as part of that attack action, but you can restrain someone with a net and then attack them a bunch.
Honestly, I'd let you throw a second net. I'd be down with that.
The only reason I didn't is because then you can have someone who is restrained with a net and then restrained with another net, and it's like, oh, just every turn I'm gonna throw 2 more nets on this guy. Oh, it's my turn, net. Oh, it's my turn, net. And like they have to use their action to remove it or deal 5 slashing damage to it. So like by applying 2 nets at once, you can sort of lock down an enemy forever. Which I think you should need at least 2 characters dedicated to throwing nets to do that.
That would be great for the fighters that follow the Spider Lord.
Oh god, just like a bunch of drow fighters. And just oh god, I love that.
That'd be awesome.
Let's move on to the halberdier real quick, and then we can just talk about all of these at once. Halberdier, you've spent countless hours training with halberds, and they are now nearly an extension of your body. You gain the following benefits. Whenever you have advantage on a melee attack roll you make with a halberd and hit, add d4 to the attack's damage if the lower of the 2 d20 rolls would also hit the target. Whenever you have disadvantage on a melee attack roll you make with a halberd and miss, you can use your reaction to make another attack with the halberd if the higher of the 2 d20 rolls would have hit the target. Once per turn, when you hit a creature with a melee attack with a halberd, you can add your proficiency bonus to the damage. You're less sure about that one? Well, let me read Glaive Mastery.
Yeah, no, I want you to finish this up and then talk a little about your thought processes.
Glaive Mastery. You are a particularly ferocious combatant with a glaive, a force to be feared on the battlefield. You gain the following benefits. When attacking with a glaive, your critical hit range is expanded by 1. That is, if you would normally score a critical hit on a roll of 20, you instead score one on a roll of 19 or 20. If you would normally score a critical hit on a roll of 19 or 20, you instead score one on a roll of 18 to 20, and so on. When you hit a creature with a melee attack with a glaive, the creature must make a DC 10 wisdom saving throw or else become frightened of you until the start of your next turn. A creature that succeeds on this saving throw is immune to this effect for 24 hours.
Do you want to go into your thought processes, or?
Well, so for superior net throwing, the thought process was, man, throwing nets sucks so bad. I wish it didn't suck so bad. And so I'm just removing disadvantages. I'm not even really giving you anything above and beyond. I'm just removing disadvantages. For halberdier, my thought process was that so the main advantage of using a halberd in pitched combat in the late Middle Ages and early Renaissance was that in one-on-one combat, a halberd was just about the fiercest thing that you could take on. It could slash, it could bludgeon, it could pierce, and it could do it all from like 8 feet away. It was absolutely terrifying to face a halberd in one-on-one combat because it just hit so goddamn hard. And so I wanted to make it hit a little harder. If you have advantage, you hit a little harder. If you have disadvantage, you can take another attack, and once per turn, add your proficiency bonus to damage. And for glaives, I like crit fisher builds, and there's no way to do that in 5e without being a champion. So I wanted to just give something an expanded crit range, and I personally am a sucker for pole arms, so I put it on a pole arm here.
Love glaives.
Pole arms are so cool. In the second edition player's
That's
handbook,
why spears should be cooler.
in the second edition player's handbook, there's an entire full page illustration of just like 30 different kinds of pole arms with names next to them. And I was like, oh man, that's so fucking cool. I just love pole arms. And the wisdom saving throw thing was just, a frighten effect. It's hard to get it to go off because it's DC 10 and they get immunity once they succeed on it. Like, you can't just spam this thing, but it can give you a little bit of an advantage on certain low wisdom enemies.
So we already talked a little bit about superior net throwing. I think it's cool. I think that, nets are sorely in the need of some support to make them feel a bit worth it. I do think what you said about the net throwing thing, I think the point is, like, nets are supposed to be a 2-person weapon. So, like, the way to not get disadvantage is to have someone help you or give you the help action. So, like, the two of you throw the net, but that also kind of sucks.
Yeah.
So I'm totally down with superior net throwing. I still kind of want to play around, maybe letting people throw 2 nets, because it's only 5 HP. A drag could break both nets in one slash.
I think that it's probably all right to let somebody throw 2 nets, because unless they're a fighter, then that means that they're dedicating their entire turn to throwing nets. It's probably okay, but it seems rife for cheesing, and so I was just like, no.
For halberdier, I love effects that give you things like where the other die in your double die roll does something. I love that a lot. So
yeah,
I'm a huge fan of fell handed. I'm sad that never got added.
So cool.
But the disadvantage of being able to reroll your attack, that one's interesting. You have to use your reaction. It's interesting because
it's probably still at disadvantage.
Well, maybe. It probably is, but, like, there's a lot of situations where it's just, like, the next attack is at disadvantage. So, like, if your disadvantage misses, you could just, like, oh, okay, well, then I'll just roll with that disadvantage. And that's interesting. But it does require that your second die hit, which is likely, if you think about the fact, like, if you need your second, it's as likely as hitting with advantage. Right. Which is
pretty likely. Because if you're fighting appropriate CR monsters, you should have about, a 55 or 60% chance of hitting. So, like, your chance of hitting with advantage is 76%. Like, that's a pretty good, actually, 70.4, 84%, not 76, 84%. So yeah, that's the thing. You've got a very good chance of hitting with your second attack, even if your disadvantage attack missed. So yeah. I think.
Well, though it's the fact that it uses your reaction, though, I think I'm chill with that.
Well, you can only do it once. That's the thing. The reaction severely limits it, and also, like, if that was an opportunity attack, you just can't do it at all because you've already used your reaction.
Yeah, and if you want to do other polearm builds, like take Sentinel with Polearm Master, for instance, you use your reaction for the stuff probably.
Yeah.
So it doesn't.
That's another thing that I wanted Halberdier and Glaive Mastery to do, is provide polearm builds that don't necessarily
Yeah.
need Polearm Master or Sentinel. Like, I
Yeah.
wanted to give you other things to do with polearms. They're just so underrated.
Yeah. The one thing that I'm a little iffy about is just the flat adding a proficiency bonus to the damage once per turn with the halberd. Because it just seems like I don't know.
I think because the other two effects are so kind of like you have to have advantage or you have to have disadvantage, this adds something that you can do.
Well, and I
Otherwise.
wanted to add something simple and effective, because Halberdier was already the most complicated of the three, but I also felt like it was the weakest because you had to have advantage or have disadvantage for it to do anything. And I didn't want only one of them to be a half feat.
Yeah, it's just that so all of the other effects are so specific to the weapon, from all of these feats, and including the two other features of the halberd, whereas that one's just like it just feels tacked on. Like like as you said, it's like it's filling space because there wasn't enough, and that makes it feel a little bit out of place to me.
Well, no, I don't think of it as filling space because there wasn't enough stuff. It's more of like the other two I'm not going to be using as often. This is something that I can use with this ability instead of rarely using this ability.
Yeah, I mean that I agree with that too. It's just that's how I feel, is that it feels like it's meant to fill space because it's so not weapon specific. Like you could put this on
Right,
any weapon feat if you wanted,
Yeah,
Yeah.
which is why it
it's
stands
very-
out to me.
Yeah, it's
In
very
that aspect,
bland,
sure.
meat and potatoes kind of. I get where you're coming from on that. I just, by the nature of what I needed to fill this gap, which was a simple, clean, but widely applicable ability, I'm not sure that you're going to. It would be difficult to find an ability that fits the bill on all of those, but also feels specific to the halberd.
Yeah.
I
Mhm.
honestly, I thought about just giving you like an additional D4 on all of your attacks, just like you're increasing the damage. But since I'm already giving you the D4 on the advantage attacks, like I didn't want to just, I don't know.
Yeah.
That felt kind of crude. That's the thing, as despite this being a like simple space filler, it doesn't feel crude. It just feels bland.
Hmm. It's
Yeah.
like a boring main staple to the ability almost.
Kind of, that's the thing. It's supposed to be like, oh, this is the bread and butter ability,
Yeah.
despite being listed third, and the other two are more niche but more fun. Like they're more interesting.
Just move
Yeah.
that wording around, put that on top, and it's not even filler
Honestly,
anymore.
I was thinking, if if that was listed first, would it feel less boring?
I think so.
I don't know.
I think upon first reading it wouldn't, but once you've gotten into it, like and realized it, sure. But
I definitely get where you're coming from, Shawn. Like
Yeah.
I understand the criticism. I'm just not sure what else fits in that space that wouldn't have that problem, you know?
yeah, unless you can find something else that the halberd can do, like that is halberdy to like.
Yeah,
add
the issue
to
is
it, that
that a
would be
lot of what
something
the halberd can do that would be halberdy and great for a feat is already in the pole arm master
Yeah,
feat.
that's
Right.
everything I was
Yeah.
bringing up for it was that. But it's just a fearsome weapon, so more
What
damage.
you could add like when you hit with this weapon, you can choose its damage type between slashing, bludgeoning, and piercing.
How much would that change?
There are some creatures that it wouldn't change a lot. It's another like ribbony ability, but there are some
Yeah.
creatures where that affects, like skeletons. They're vulnerable to bludgeoning and resistant to piercing of all sorts. But yeah, unfortunately, because of the way that 5e handles damage, doesn't change a whole lot.
Yeah.
But
I don't think
it is
that
a
would.
little flavorable thing, a little ribbon. But it's another thing where it's not super applicable in all situations.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah, that's the thing. That's
It ch-
replacing a bread and butter ability with another niche ability.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Why?
Hmm.
why in the glaive to get off halberd for a second?
I was gonna go glaive too.
Why fear? What?
I was kind of my thinking.
Lubu. Lubu uses a glaive, and everybody fucking feared him because he killed so many fucking people.
I don't know who that is.
Oh, he's from like the divided dynasties of China back in the day.
He's like one of those Three Kingdoms.
Yeah, he's like one of those like super romanticized like war figures from back then. He's big in Dynasty Warriors, and every game they introduce him, it's like, oh my god, it's fucking Lu Bu. And he's just going around killing everybody with his glaive. Everybody's fucking scared of the guy.
Honestly, I was just. It felt like a feature that kind of made sense to tack on to a crit fishing thing. I just felt like if you are getting particularly vicious attacks in more frequently than other people on the battlefield, it makes sense that you've got an intimidating presence to go along with it. Like, that's just, I guess there's nothing really super specific about the glaive that makes this different than, like, I don't know, putting it on some other polearm. Like, this totally could have gone on like a fucking Volge or like a glaive Gizarm or like anything else, but like, I don't know. The glaive and the halberd in the PHB are identical, except one is heavier and one is more expensive. So like, there's no reason to use one over the other.
Yeah,
I wanted to make a reason to use one over the other. I wanted to make two feats that were applicable in different situations, or not even just different situations, but just that like encourage different play patterns.
Yeah.
To distinguish two very cool weapons in reality that are completely indistinguishable in 5e.
Yeah, that's definitely one of the biggest gripes I have with the weapon system in 5e. I going over this entire week of stuff that we're going on really makes me want to delve into weapon stuff and figure something out.
Yeah, and I'm sure other people have homebrewed similar stuff to this before. Like, I know that I've seen people talking about this on the forums, because among the people who like a crunchier D&D experience, this is the sort of thing that ticks them off. They look at the weapon table and they're like, these all feel exactly the same.
Yeah.
Like,
what has the highest number and isn't gonna make me like have disadvantage or something?
Exactly. Like, what's the biggest number that I can get without breaking the rules? And it's like, okay, cool, those are the only weapons I'm going to use. And so that leaves like 2/3 of the table that no one is ever going to use, because like, oh, if it's on the simple weapons table and it deals d4 damage, unless it's the dagger, no one's using it.
Yeah.
Like the sickle.
Exactly. Yeah. Sickle, no one is using it. Like,
despite how fucking cool it is.
Like,
right?
Club, no one is using that. Like,
spears, nobody's using that. I don't remember.
Occasionally, because spears are versatile, aren't they? Aren't they the only versatile simple weapon?
They are versatile, yeah.
Yeah, so that's the thing. Spears, there is still a tiny use case for.
I don't remember what the build was, but I was trying to do a build that involved spears, and I think it was something to do with Achilles, and I didn't want to do it because spears were so bad. I was like, this isn't worth it.
The only build I remember working on that was like a very weird weapon build, I was going to do a small fighter who wielded a lance, because lances, despite having reach, are not technically heavy. They require you attack with disadvantage unless you're mounted, but they're not heavy. And so a small fighter could be mounted on a medium creature, which is cheaper than a large creature. So I could get a medium mount easier than a large mount, and then I would have a D12 reach weapon.
Dude, make a barbarian that uses a lance.
Yeah.
Or, that's what I always say. If you want to make a mount, make a small creature with a medium mount, because you don't run into all the issues of having a large mount.
Yeah, it's just that's a sort of mood killer for the fantasy of most mounted combatants. It's like, oh, you want to build a mounted build? Well, your best option is a kobold riding a dog. It's like, what? I'm sorry, what? That's my best option? Yes. Kobold riding a Mastiff is your best option for a mounted combatant. Like, bar
Yeah.
none.
I played Rise of the Rune Lords of Pathfinder, and one of my favorite NPCs from that is a goblin called Rip Nugget. And I don't know how much of this was my DM or my uncle who was the DM putting stuff together, but he was a goblin who rode on a giant lizard that could like walk on walls and shit. It was really fun.
That's incredible. In one of our one shots that we did a few months ago, I was playing a goblin who was mounted on a giant wasp, which was sick as hell.
Oh yeah. You came in late in that one, and then you just fucking show up on a wasp.
I remember that.
It's horrifying.
But it's so fucking cool.
As for the glaive mastery,
oh right, yeah. Back to the topic at hand.
For the purposes of this is an interesting one because the crit fishing feat is something that I want in the game, just as a general thing you can get. And this would stack with it, obviously. So that's a little bit weird. But the main thing that sticks out to me the glaive is the DC 10 wisdom save. I don't think there's a reason why this can't be a normal DC. Like, I get it's because you still want it to work on creatures when you get the higher levels.
And
shit,
DC 10, I didn't even notice it was only a DC 10.
Yeah, DC 10, even for minions at a high level, is a little too low, I would say.
Okay.
I'd probably just make it the standards, 8 plus blah.
Okay. 8 plus proficiency plus strength. Since it's based on your weapon proficiencies. Yeah.
Yeah. And that's it,
Again,
honestly. Otherwise, I'm perfectly fine with this feat.
I think that's totally reasonable. I was trying to intentionally make the fear effect kind of weak, but I think that the fact that it's only once in 24 hours, I think that's fine.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Maybe add verbiage that says once a creature succeeds on this or is affected by it, then it doesn't affect them.
I actually explicitly wanted you to be able to chain the effect. If you kept wailing on a creature that was already frightened of you, I wanted that to be able to chain. Which is part of why I kept the DC so low. I didn't want that to be a very powerful play style, but I wanted that to be an option of no, I am chasing this guy down and wailing on him, and he is terrified every step of the way.
That's fair.
Yeah,
that's fair.
I like that.
Oh man, we've got a call out for the Bec de Corban in the chat, which is another one of my favorite pole arms. It's the Raven's Beak in French, and oh man, it's so cool.
I gotta say, if somebody was doing the net thing in a campaign that I was DMing, I'd be really pissed off if they just kept netting my fucking NPCs and shit. But isn't that what it's all about? So
that's what it's all about.
Just trying to piss your DM off. Stupid shit I'm the net master. Take my nets.
Honestly, another thing that I was a little bit disappointed with in this, and that it's the reason why there's a little bit of a silly description for superior net throwing, is that I couldn't think of a good name for superior net throwing. I was just like, you're really good at throwing nets, man. You're just so good at throwing nets.
You want to be like master net thrower?
Yeah, I couldn't.
Master nettery.
Master netter. I don't.
Net to the max.
Maximum net. I don't know. I couldn't think of anything that I was super happy with.
Yes. Sit in the chat. I'm the net man. I get in the battle. I start throwing nets all over the field.
Basically.
And I start eating it.
I originally
give the net a 60 to 120 range.
I just had it called net mastery. But then I got to the glaives, and I was like, "Oh, I can't think of a word to use for glaives."
Just call it fisherman.
Oh man. Yeah.
All right.
But yeah, if either of you can think of a clever thing to rename either superior net throwing or glaive mastery, feel free.
Yeah, they're pretty on the nose.
I'm not stuck on Savant either.
But honestly, for yours, I think it makes sense that for yours, they all at least have the exact same name. It's just Weapon Savant. For mine, Halberdier, that's just the name of somebody who wields a halberd. And then I just couldn't think of anything for the other two.
You're off on your names this week.
Yeah, I don't know, man. I've been busy.
Yeah.
It's been a hard week.
Yeah.
All right, let's move on here to our absentees feats here.
Ooh, can we all
Uh,
read one?
sure, we
I
can
think
all read
that's fair.
one. I'll read his little flavor text of his bard finding this. I decided to tag along with a few students during their final training expeditions. Their master accompanying them showed me some of their unique fighting methods that are exclusively taught there. She wouldn't throw me all their fighting styles, but would welcome me back if the pages were to find themselves in the next tournament. That's
Nailed it. Nailed it.
Justin's character.
I've heard
Justin,
him practicing in the basement, and that's exactly what he sounded like.
Yeah, Justin, that's what you get for not showing up to the podcast. We read your stuff in that voice.
I'll go ahead and read the first one. This first one is for the shield, tactical shield. You've become a mobile force on the battlefield.
Fortress.
Fortress. Sorry. Increase your strength and constitution by 1 to a maximum of 20. Hostile creatures can no longer gain the benefit from flanking you. Oh, okay, interesting. As a bonus action, after you take the attack action, you can make an additional attack with your shield. This attack does 1d4 plus your strength finder plus bludgeoning damage. I'm pretty sure, doesn't Shield Master already kind of do this?
Does it?
I think so. Or is it just you can shove? As a bonus action, you can shove. Okay, so this is like an actual attack versus shoving. Anyway. Next. We'll talk about all of them once we read them all.
I'll read the flail one. Chain Warden. Prerequisite. Proficient with flails. Your prowess? I think you mean prowess. Your prowess with the flail makes it difficult for enemies to escape your grasp. Increase your strength of con score by 1 to a maximum of 20. When using a flail, you gain a reach of 10 feet. As a bonus action, you can attempt to pull a creature down with your flail. A creature makes a strength saving throw. The DC equals 8 plus your proficiency bonus plus your strength modifier. On a failed save, they are knocked prone.
And Bladed Master. Prerequisite proficient with longswords. You have learned to wield longswords with deadly precision. Increase your strength or con score by 1 to a max of 20. The damage dealt by your longsword is a d10 instead of a d8, and the versatile damage is a d12 instead of a d10. As a bonus action, after you take the attack action, you can make an additional attack with the longsword against a target within 5 feet of the last creature you attacked within range. I had the same idea of doing that with the damaging changes with the things that I was doing. It did, as I was thinking about it, feel weird to change those.
I don't think there's any particular reason why you can't change those, especially since our whole shtick here was that we wanted to give each weapon something that made it feel a little bit more special. Increasing the damage die is a little boring since you're basically just giving you a +1 bonus to damage.
Yeah.
Just mathematically, that's what you're doing. I do like that for the longsword one, you're essentially being given a bonus action cleave. Like, that's cool. The reach with the flail feels a little weird to me.
Yeah.
And I also feel like pulling somebody with a flail is... I don't want to call Justin out like this, but I feel like it's maybe misunderstanding what a flail does.
I don't think it is. No, I mean, flails, one of the biggest fantasies is, overcoming the shield, but another thing that flail is used for is, actually, as Brain points on the chat, is knocking people off of riders, or knocking riders off their mounts. So it makes sense to me that would, reach up and do that. Plus, I actually looked up pictures of flails, because I was like, is it just the flail that looks like the flail snail that exists, or are there other flails? But no, one of the earliest depictions of flails are, these maces on really long staffs with, a hanging thing at the end. So, it makes sense that it might have reach.
Okay, I'm gonna be honest. I'm used to seeing flails depicted as shorter staves with really short chains between the staff and the ball. So I apologize, Justin. I I thought that I knew more about medieval weaponry than you, and I guess that's my cross to bear.
So I'm actually of the ones on here. That's probably the one I'm the most a fan of, to be honest.
I like the shield one actually.
I have a soft spot for the shield one just because I love tanky builds. That's like, no, I'm gonna get in the middle of everything and I'm gonna gum everything up and no one's gonna attack me. It's gonna be great. It never quite works out like that, but I love it. And so I like giving shields extra defensive capabilities and extra offensive capabilities. That's nice.
Yeah.
The biggest thing for me.
Tactical shield is not it.
Tactical shield. Brain said tactical shield sounds like what you call a shield if you dropped it from the top of a wall to hit someone's head. Tactical shield.
I agree with them. That is also a tactical shield.
I love Chain Warden. Do something with like the word fortress in the like shield title.
Honestly, Mobile Fortress is kind of a great name. Like,
yeah. My thing about tactical shield is that flanking is a optional rule.
Fuck your flanking.
What?
No, fuck your flanking.
What do you?
What Sean's saying is that flanking isn't in like the SRE rules. Like flanking is merely an optional rule, so it is weird to have a thing refer to it. But hey, Sean, you know what else is technically an optional rule?
Feats.
Yeah.
Yeah. No. I just think it's interesting to call out an optional rule like that.
Yeah, I feel like most. Maybe this is just, you know. I should be careful here because anecdote is not the singular form of data, but everyone I know plays with flanking rules. Like,
that is true. I often see the discussion on Reddit where it's like flanking rules are stupid because moving doesn't matter. So I'll often see a thread with a bunch of people like, I just use +2, and then I also see threads where people are like, I don't use flanking at all because it's stupid. But yeah, what were you saying, Zach?
What if, and this would be strong. Anyone within 5 feet of you can't have advantage on.
Ooh.
That.
On a melee attack.
Melee attacks from creatures within 5 feet of you cannot benefit from advantage. That's. I think. I like that.
If they're attacking you specifically.
Right, yeah. Melee attacks against you from creatures within 5 feet of you cannot benefit from advantage. Or honestly, do you even need the within 5 feet of you thing? Because, like, a creature with reach is still going to be buffeted by your shield. So, like,
5 feet.
Melee attacks against you cannot benefit from advantage.
Yeah.
While wielding a shield, obviously. But...
Melee attacks can't have advantage against you. That might be...
It's strong.
Yeah.
But, I mean, it's not like you're giving them disadvantage. They just can't benefit from advantage.
Right.
And you're a goddamn mobile fortress, okay?
Can we use the word bulwark in the name of this? I do love the name bulwark.
We already have a magical item called Bulwark that we put out.
Yeah, I know. I named it. I honestly, I don't think that's too strong. It's on the cusp, but I don't think that's too strong.
I'm not sure what Brain's getting at here in the chat. The 5-foot rule is stupid. Whoever wrote it was never hit by a bat or shanked from that distance.
Possibly something about the 5 foot, like making ranged attacks from 5 feet, or I don't know. I'm not sure.
But
if you feel like clarifying, please do. Because
he's rushing down to
made
downstairs.
A lot of other good points. So
he's rushing downstairs to give us his side of the.
Oh, Justin is?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
He just got home.
Well,
do I have anything else I want to criticize Justin for before he gets on?
I don't like the additional damage, the just changing the damage die.
In Blade Master, that does feel very weird to me because it turns your longsword essentially into a great sword. That can be one-handed.
Yeah, And it's also the most boring of the improvements here.
Yeah.
even just giving 10 feet reach is nice.
But I mean, that honestly, for the flail, since I've now been educated
Yeah.
on what flails looked like, I mean that makes sense for the flail and what it was apparently doing in medieval combat. So like,
Yeah.
Okay, Brain did because we're waiting on Justin anyway. Brain did elaborate. Attacking from less than 5 feet away doesn't give advantage. That rule's dumb. I'm not sure what you're referring to because there's no rule that says that. In 5e.
yeah,
Attacking from less than 5 feet away doesn't. That's true. But yeah, I think the increase in the damage dice.
Oh, do you mean like grappling somebody? Maybe.
I don't
like,
think so
if
because
you're
we haven't talked about
towards
grappling at all. Sorry, we're just trying to piece together. Oh, okay. Well, that just fucked up my entire overlay. All right, give me a second. Oh shit.
Oh. Oh god.
Fuck. I gotta fix all this. Okay, it's all fixed. Good. But now my names aren't in the right order. Fuck, because your webcam's not on.
Oh,
And I have two Adams. Shit.
oh man,
Shit.
double representation for me.
Why is Zach at the top? What is happening?
What? Because this camera isn't on.
what is happening?
But no, why is Zach at the
Why
top?
am I at the top? I'm gonna go to the bottom. Yeah.
What is happening?
I don't understand what's happening.
Why am I Zach?
I don't know. Hey, I'm not gonna fix this. That's just gonna be
That's
the rest of the podcast.
Okay,
That's
fine.
this is our. Sorry, you can't see my mouse. This is Zach. You still can't see my mouse. Okay, below me is Zach now. Zach has turned into that, and now we have two Adams.
Perfect.
I'm duplicating.
Defend yourself.
What are you defending? What are we defending?
I don't know. What am I defending right now other than the shitty names? Look,
I don't know. You're the one who rushed on.
I mean, I was just coming on to like say that I thought Zach's idea was fucking cool. I verbally, I like shouted in my car, "This is such a cool idea," and then immediately thought, I don't know how balanced that would be.
The no advantage thing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I
You can.
really-
I'll tell you what. You can have that idea if you change the name.
Yeah, absolutely. No, the fucking name is
We're
stupid.
bargaining here.
Trying to think of a different thing to do with the longsword other
Yeah.
than just increasing the damage die. Honestly, I really like the cleave. What if we
Yeah.
just made the cleave better so that instead of a bonus action after you take the attack action, what if
What was your idea with the just adding the damage to it?
So the idea, but I honestly,
The
I was
idea is I
struggling
want the
trying-
longsword to be stronger.
I
Hey,
was
that was all my reasoning I had with the net, so like I get it.
I was having some struggles coming up with ideas for what I would refer to as the passive that I gave, because the way that I themed everything was everything got it was a half feat, one passive, one kind of active thing that you can do, and I was spitballing around with it, and I was like, well, the longsword is such an iconic weapon for where it can be utilized one-handed or two-handed that I thought that for all the other versatile weapons in the game, I felt like it would be okay with being kind of the best versatile weapon in regards of damage.
I like Brain's idea here. I'm not sure how exactly to implement it, but I
Yeah,
do
Brain
like the
said,
idea of giving it more attacks.
Yeah, he said instead of increasing the damage die, maybe give a low chance to make another attack. If you make an additional attack, you have a low chance to make another one.
When you hit with it, you roll a d6, and if you get a 6, you can attack again.
That's insanity.
That's
So,
like
I mean,
complicating it quite a
But,
bit
like,
in
so,
my
like,
mind.
so kind of like the extra attack that you get from Great Weapon Master, where like if you kill someone or crit, you get an extra attack.
Yeah,
But
That could
that's
work.
already a thing that Great Weapon Master does.
yeah.
I kind of like the idea. Like I really like the cleave idea that you have here. I mean, you didn't word it as a cleave; you worded it as an additional attack against another target. But I think that if instead of increasing the damage die, we just gave it a as a bonus action. Like if you take a bonus action before your attacks, if you do so, then your attacks hit all creatures or any number of creatures within 5 feet of you instead of just one.
My main issue with that is that there is the Ranger ability that allows you to make a melee attack against any number of creatures within 5 feet of you. I actually think it might even be within range. So even within
it's any number of creatures within 5 feet of your original target, I believe. Because I think you could do with I'm pretty sure you could do with a bow as well.
I don't know that one. What's that? What is that? What's that from?
It is.
I think it's from the hunter. Yeah.
The bow has a 10-foot. The bow essentially gives a 10-foot AOE. Hey man, I care about the Ranger. Somebody around here has to.
I mean, I guess the Ranger already gets so little. We probably shouldn't step on its toes. I don't know. Do cleave that doesn't step on the hunter's toes then.
The issue too with this is if facing was a thing in 5th edition, you could essentially do a face. But
I mean, we don't even need to
facing is an optional rule in 5e, just like flanking is. You had no problem calling that one out. It is, yeah. Facing is an optional rule.
It's just an optional rule that almost nobody uses as opposed to flanking.
Yeah.
I mean, you don't even need facing. Just it would be wordy, but you could say, when you make a melee attack with a longsword, choose another target within 5 feet of your original target that is also within range. That target is also subject to the attack roll made. That's bad. It's terrible.
You hated that as you were saying it.
Yes, no, I knew it was bad when I started saying it, but you could make cleave work within 5e rules without facing. But no. I don't know. This feels very close to something that I really like. I like where you're going with this longsword thing, but I do agree that upgrading the weapon dice does feel pretty boring. Pretty boring.
I'm aware. It was difficult coming up with essentially a passive for the longsword that would separate it. And
hey, what about expanding its crit range?
No. I didn't want to expand its crit range. I was trying to stay away from that stuff. I was like, there's been quite a few things, and we've talked a lot about expanding crit ranges. I want to go something different.
Have we even mentioned it before tonight? Because
not on the podcast, but we have talked about it extensively, throughout different sessions.
Okay, sure. Yeah, I'll give you that. We've definitely talked about it before. Well, if we aren't expanding the crit range, what if you give it baked in brutal critical?
That's not bad.
I think slashing kind of already has that.
Oh God, it does.
Or slasher.
Yeah, slasher already does that. Well, if we can't expand the crit range or enhance the damage dice or make the regular damage dice bigger.
Sorry, slasher is the one that reduces your speed and then gives disadvantage on all attack rolls. I think it's Piercer. Piercer, I think, is the one.
Okay, sorry. So I've been trying to think of what Brain said on the adding an extra attack to it. What if, so the way that Polearm does it is you can make a bonus action to make an extra attack, something like that, where you would choose between the making an extra attack on one target or cleaving as a bonus action. One would be getting an extra attack on a target.
One would be getting an extra attack on a target.
Kind of like how Polearm Master does it, where you get to hit with the other end of the sword or the other end of the polearm as a bonus action. I don't know how you would do that, but
wait, I'm sorry, I don't get what you're saying, man. So you're saying that you'd have a bonus action to do what?
To either if you're facing one person, get another smaller damaging attack on them, maybe, or what he has with the bonus action to cleave.
I
But
mean,
then you
Oh,
would
so
be
you're saying
choosing between the
just
two.
just give it 2 bonus actions.
Yeah.
One that's a lower damage die, but against a creature that you've already hit, and one that's your regular damage die, but against a creature that you haven't hit.
that
Mhm.
that does break the mold that I was going for with these feats.
Yes.
Uh, which is something that I wasn't, which is something that I didn't necessarily want because I liked the mold that I had for them. Because in the
You-
future, if we add more stuff like this,
Fair
I
enough.
I like having kind of the
Okay,
way that
so
it
You
was.
can stay stuck in your ways all you want, old man.
so you're
I'm the
looking
youngest here. Fuck you.
so you're looking for a passive that you can add to bonus action cleave.
But I did like essentially giving it brutal critical. I mean, it doesn't step on
Isn't it
slashers
brutal crit?
toes.
But brutal critical instead of the increased damage die. You mean?
Yeah,
Yeah.
so give it like an addition, like roll 1 additional die.
Okay.
It leans on a lot of different things involving crits.
The
But,
thing is
like,
that if you're worried about Cleave stepping on the Ranger's toes, why aren't you worried about brutal critical literally just stepping on the Barbarian and Orc's toes?
Well, I think it's just because there's already a race and a class that can both do that, and so it's like, well, if you're playing an orc fighter, you aren't stepping on the barbarian's toes, and if you're playing a human barbarian, you aren't stepping on the orc's toes. It's just that you're both allowed to do that.
I guess that's fair.
Yeah. And I mean, you could be an orc barbarian with the slash with the slash, or not the slasher, with this feat,
Piercer or bladed master, yeah,
and
and just absolutely wreck people with criticals.
and you're crit fishing, but in a different way.
Yeah, I guess. I had an idea, but then when I chimed in to talk about the orcs, I forgot about it.
I feel like that kind of steps on the mold, the idea of keeping it with a mold, because like then that's only working on crits instead of like how these ones are working.
Yeah.
Yeah.
How about think about, okay, Justin, what is the meta in using a long sword in medieval combat? One of the biggest metas is obviously using sword and board.
Right.
Wait, what? Okay, what if you just play up the sword as a defensive weapon? What if you're wielding a long sword and no other weapons? You get +1 to your AC.
Isn't that just a fighting style?
Well, no, that is the dueling fighting style, which is
That's if you're holding 2.
No,
Dueling is if you're wielding a weapon in one hand and not a weapon in the other. So you could, if you're doing sword and board, it gives you a bonus to your AC.
Right, no, it's the duel. It's a duel with their feet that gives you the AC bonus with the 2 weapons.
Yes. But I mean, what I was suggesting was basically just something that stacks with that, but also works if you're wielding a longsword two-handed. Because dueling does not give you an AC bonus if you're wielding a two-handed weapon. It's only if you're wielding a weapon in one hand and not in the other. And also, I mean, this could just stack with the dueling feat. Like, I mean, yes, it's dangerous to add a bunch of ways to get +1 AC, but I think that adding one that's a feat is not the end of the world, especially if it requires a specific weapon.
Brain says that the longsword was the last resort of weapons.
Right, no, but that doesn't tell us the meta use of the longsword. That's just when you actually have a longsword out. What training do you default to with that setup? Is the question.
Training.
I also thought short swords were more likely the sidearm, but that's getting off topic.
Short swords were, by my understanding, rarer in actual combat use. Short swords were generally for like gladiatorial bouts or like similar like showmanship style stuff.
Gotcha.
I think I like the idea of the defensive bonus if you're wielding the long sword and nothing else.
Yeah.
No other weapon, I should say, not nothing else. Because that is the benefit that you get from either use of the longsword, two-handed or one-handed.
Yeah.
While you are wielding the longsword, you gain while you're wielding the longsword and no other weapon, you gain a +1 to your AC.
Essentially, yeah.
I think that definitely is fucking way better than what I got, and it's not boring.
If you're happy with that, then I like that one.
I'm happy
And then
with it.
I think that
the cleave attack as the bonus action is perfectly fine with that,
Yeah.
because that's
Yeah.
a pretty strong passive, so it's fine that this is a pretty niche activated ability.
It's like the opposite of what I had with the spear.
as for the other feats, I think shield is fine. I do think it's a little weird to call out a optional rule without explicitly saying so.
I like the ignore advantage thing as a replacement for that.
The ignore advantage is also sick, but I think that can get way too strong too quickly.
The thing is, I don't think that's ever too strong, because best case scenario, that's just bringing them back down to a straight roll. It's never giving disadvantage.
True. I think the issue with that, and this is the main one that I'm going to cite, is just, and this doesn't really happen a whole lot, but in PvP scenarios it can. Rogues will have a harder time getting sneak attack against you.
One, the game isn't balanced for PvP, and
True.
two, they can still get a sneak attack on you if somebody's next to you.
Mm-hmm. Or they do it at range.
Yes, or they do it at range, and this was already for melee. This was only for melee attacks.
Yeah, I'd probably add if you're not incapacitated.
Sure. Yes, if you're not incapacitated while you're wearing a shield, a couple of common sense restrictions. But
yeah,
nah. If you have a shield on you, you're indestructible. You can't even die.
I'm trying to think if there's any other reason, because like I'm thinking all the scenarios in which a melee attack can have advantage on you, and obviously thinking the conditions like blind, if they're invisible against you, which is effectively you being blind. So it's mostly if they can't see you or if you're incapacitated. But if you had to be incapacitated to be able to do it, then that eliminates those issues. So then the question is whether or not you're okay with allowing there not to be advantage against you when you're blind. That doesn't sound that bad.
Restrained is another one, but
there's also restrained. That's true, because restrained does not incapacitate you. So it's mostly those two then.
So damn good with a shield. Fuck it.
But if you when you're restrained too, there's a ton of other caveats, like can't move, you have disadvantage on dex saves. Usually whenever you're restrained, you're also like there's also some type of like a grapple effect, especially from monsters. With spells, there's like a ton of different things that will like also inflict on you, like they'll do damage or something.
Yeah, I think the no advantage with you when they're attacking you with a melee attack could be okay.
One final thing, and I actually did think about this when I was coming up with this. Pack tactics, for where if an ally of that creature is within 5 feet of you, that creature can get advantage. That's another one.
If an ally creature is within 5 feet of you, what was it?
If an ally to the creature is within 5 feet of the creature's target, they get the creature then will get advantage on all attack rolls against the target.
I mean, pack tactics is a very strong ability that is key to how the creatures that have it perform in combat. But one member of your party being immune to it, I don't think is that big of a deal.
All right, that was just something else that I thought.
Honestly, that I'm glad that you brought it up, because I was kind of racking my brain, like, are there any creatures where them granting themselves advantage is key to how they function in combat? And pack tactics is a great example. So kobolds, wolves, like a few others, pack tactics is very important to how they function in combat. But I think it's totally fine that there is a feat that also requires you to be doing a shield build that makes one person immune to that specific tactic.
Yeah, I think that's fair. Yeah. I think immunity. Not because obviously it's going to depend on the wording, but like a creature cannot roll with advantage is different than a creature can't have advantage.
Right. My original wording when we were first talking about it was can't gain the benefits of advantage. But so I guess the question is, do you want to still allow them to make a straight roll if they have both, or do you want having both to mean that they roll with disadvantage?
I think straight roll if they have both would be the better approach.
Okay, so
Yeah.
And that's not a super common scenario that's gonna fuck things up.
right. So I think that you'd need to word it as let me think about this. Whenever a creature attacks you with a melee attack, if they have advantage but don't have disadvantage,
You could just say a creature cannot roll with advantage against on melee attack rolls against you.
can you say that?
Yeah. Because you're explicitly calling out the roll, not them having advantage.
I don't know if I've ever seen anything worded that way.
Yeah,
but
I was trying to think if there's any like
There's the
precedent
Clockwork
for-
Sorcerer. It's not a super common effect, and I don't even know if the Clockwork Sorcerer even says it that way either.
Right, because they changed a lot of the wording on the Clockwork Soul Sorcerer after the UA.
I think this
Well,
one says,
the wording we can nail down.
yeah, when a creature you can see with this is about to roll a d20 with advantage disadvantage, you can use your action to prevent the roll from being affected by advantage disadvantage. So that phrase there explicitly calls out the difference between rolling with and having effect that gives.
Right.
So I think just saying it cannot be rolled with advantage. It's the same way that we did your sneak attack rolls. Your sneak attack rolls.
Yeah, my rapid strikes.
Yeah, the rapid strike says that they keep you roll with advantage, but it doesn't mean that they're at disadvantage if they have any disadvantage source.
I thought that we said that my rapid strikes couldn't benefit from advantage.
Maybe it's been a long time, but yeah. Again, this is something like Zach said. We can work out the wording afterward. I think Shade Warding is good as it is. I think Blade Master with that change to the AC with no other weapons is good, and I think Tactical Shield replacing the flanking with that effect, I think is a pretty good change.
So what I said on Rapid Strike when I originally wrote it up was these attack rolls cannot benefit from advantage, but I don't know if we reworded that for the post.
I think it was reworded. But yeah, that was the last thing here. Any last thoughts on that one, Justin?
They went better than expected.
Honestly, I was really happy with everybody's sets today. Like, I thought that these I think, as the person who gave the assignment, fit the assignment to a T. Like, this was exactly what I was hoping to get out of saying make weapons matter. And I thought that all four of these sets all got me thinking about the weapons in different ways, and they were all great, and I'd like to see more of them.
Hell yeah.
Great weapons, guys.
Great weapons, guys. Great weapon things.
I like that we all came up with kind of our own unique way of creating essentially a system or a series of feats for them.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree. Me and Zach kind of went the route of like sort of having a system built around the weapons, whereas you guys have like Adam's kind of, he just hit each feat was their own individual, unaffected by the other. And yours was like, I want a bunch of feats that have like a similar kind of format, which is an interesting approach. But that was it for our weapons week. Justin, you weren't here when we decided what the next subject's going to be. We're going to finally do Fey monsters, but specifically, we are going to look up folklore and make Fey about the folklore that we learn about, instead of just making up random things that are Fey. For two reasons, and I'll say this on the podcast. One is just so, you know, it kind of matches with how wizards do their Fey. Almost all their Fey are things that exist in folklore already. They're not just something they made up. but also makes it easier for us to find art to post them with. So, if they actually exist in the world, because we don't got no art. And then, that's gonna be next week. Fey creatures and folklore, and we should probably each at least make 2, probably, if we want to make it last full episode.
The last time we did monsters, we each did 2, and that was a good length.
Yeah.
I didn't even make monsters for that one.
Oh, you didn't? Oh, right. You were out of town for that one, weren't you?
Oh yeah, was it just me, you, and Zach then?
I think so, yeah, because we did. I had the Azer and the Sturge, Zach had Bullywugs, and you actually did a bunch of extras, because you had the Tarask and that dragon, and...
I had the dragon
Rex.
and the T-Rex, I think, were the 2s that we actually talked about.
Yeah.
Because we never got to the Tarask.
Yeah. But yeah, no, we're doing Fae next week. Today's word of the day
Oh yeah.
Polearm. It's polearm.
If you didn't know what that word meant until just now, we're really sorry.
Um
Well, any last words, guys, before we wrap it up here?
No. Shawn, if you ever imitate me, I will jump into the podcast with my shitty phone audio.
Oh no, I can't just kick you from the Discord. All right, well, that's going to be it this week on the Lost Ledgers. If it is lost, it must be found. If it's found, it must be remembered. See you next week.
Thanks for joining.